Good morning, everybody. Today is, I think it would be the 8th. Okay, May 8th, 2020. And I'm busy uploading videos, teaching videos. But I'll do another one. Particularly for Mr. Chief Mike Markle and the Corpus Christi Police Department. I forgot to mention on the last video, but I have mentioned this before multiple times. If you go to my YouTube catalog list on my websites and you scroll down, you'll see some, I left those on. I'll start with this. I mentioned how I went to Internal Affairs 6 years ago, 5 years ago, mad about a ticket. But because I was mad, and they knew I was mad, you have to ring the bell or knock on the door on the outside, and they could see somebody mad. So I went in, and there's maybe a lady secretary in the front, and I was mad. So they have to call the officer. And then he came out. I don't remember his name, but he was the guy running Internal Affairs. And I explained I was mad about that ticket. And because I was mad, he had a little prayer card. I'm sure he was a Catholic man, and it was St. Michael the Archangel. I have a statue of St. Michael, please my Protestant friends. Don't be upset about that. It's just, it's Christian art, okay? So when I saw the little St. Michael the Archangel card, like with the prayer, I said, oh, I got one of those. But in my discussion with the CCPD officer, in my anger, I said, you have cops in Flower Bluff that are involved with every criminal activity under the sun. Meaning, when I told that cop that statement, which included drug dealing, killing, murder, every criminal activity under the sun. Now you, in your city, if you told an officer in your department, and most people would never say it because they have them running scared, never forget these are people that are riding around with guns in cop cars, the element of criminals that can very easily murder you and kill you and get away with it. And it's been done in this community over a period of 20 years. I'll talk about it. When I told that officer, fine guy, that statement, his response, would you think it would be, how dare you speak? He wanted to know what other information I had. What other names? He knew. He knew. He knew. And I said, I'm not here for that. I'm here to complain about that ticket. Now, for those in the community that are not aware of that, you're now aware of it. All the years here where I live, working with these guys, my job is not to report any people that are civilians that are in all these problems. Because hopefully, through the ministry, that's the answer. Jesus is the answer. But because I know so many for long history, many of them testified that they were, in their past lives and in all the things, in drug dealing particularly, in distribution of methamphetamine, but other drugs as well, that there were cops on their side that were with them. So many stories, maybe in a drug house, right now, in this very day, and everybody that lives here would testify, there were cops that own properties that are drug houses. Okay? Everybody that lives here knows that. Okay, Flower Bluff has a very bad problem with methamphetamine, but there are officers who run the house. They own the house. It's their property. They rent it out. and there's dealing. And so the stories that are all true, because there were so many times where they would be in the middle of activities and they'd see a cop come up, pulling up in his cop car. Like in the front, they'd see it through the door was open in one case. And one of my friends was not aware that he was on their team. And he, like, this cop coming. He's one of us. Isn't that sad? Isn't that a disgrace to this community? How that element has pulled wool over the eyes of all these preachers that are hiring them with tithe money to have weapons to protect them. I guess God is not sufficient. So, a friend of mine that had a long history, and I've had a lot of friends that had a long history of prison time too. But they used to, there was a corpus cop. He gave the name, but I would forget the name. But he would go out of town with my friend and then do drug raids in other cities, Dallas, I think maybe, Houston, meaning they knew where the drugs were being distributed. So this corpus cop if he had his badge, he wasn't in corpus uniform because it was Dallas or wherever. He would raid, my friend was there at the time, this was years ago, and they'd raid drug houses, and the cop would go in, saying all the proper words to the people that were dealing out of that particular house, wherever it was. This is a raid, show his CCPD badge, confiscate everything, and sell it, and take it. It was just criminal activity to the hilt. Now, I believe he died of cancer, that cop. And this is true, because my friends don't, it's so many stories. In the drug trade in South Texas, and the problem we've had, but many of my friends told me they used to refer to it, a certain percentage of it as cop dope. Cop dope, that it had a certain spray smell to it, you know, meaning it was the stuff that CCPD confiscated, you know, over many years, and just right in the drug locker and sell that on the streets. And these are all testimonies of my friends, and there were so many. There were so many. There were so many that I just, you know, they're not all lying over a period of 20-something years about all this. So yes, John, we understand there's an element of actual criminal activity, which would include murder, drug dealing, drug trade, trafficking from Mexico into this community. People that are in law enforcement that do it, it's easier for them to do these things. All of them, certainly not. Now, I'll remind you of an incident that happened where I live, and this will enlighten some of my friends and neighbors. The community I live in is called Turtle Cove. It's in Flower Bluff. And this was in the news. Now, you got to read between the lines, but the stuff I just told you is all true. But there were people in our community, maybe a year now ago, or a year and a half ago, and it wasn't me, because I read this in the paper and online, but I guess there were people that knew about a drug house or two in our community, meaning in Turtle Cove, because I read these stories in the paper, and they were complaining to the chief, Mr. Mike Markle, who lives on Stewart Street here. And I visit my friend. I was on Stewart Street. I passed the chief's house the other day. He lives on Stewart Street, right off of Laguna Shores in Flower Bluff, Corpus Christi, Texas. And my friend Don, with the pier, who's dying of cancer, lives out there. He's the neighbor. So when the people in the community here complained about the drug houses, this is how it was reported in the media. What happened was, a few days later, under the chief's direction, code enforcement, which are cops, went through this entire neighborhood of how many, couple of hundred homes maybe, I don't know how many, 300 and something homes, and it used to be a gated community. And I got a notice on my door, but a lot of people did, maybe everybody. They all got notices of violations of code enforcement. Mine was clean up the weeds. Some people got notices because they had brand new fences that were an inch too high. Tear it down. Within a matter of days, we put a lien on your property. That's what the notice said. I got one. Some people got notices because they had a vehicle in their driveway with an expired inspection sticker or unregistered, but it parked in their driveway. That was considered a code enforcement violation, which according to the notice, if you don't correct it, you get a lien on your property. There were properties that had been taken and bought by officers. I had a friend, Chris. Chris was a welder. Chris, some of you remember Chris, he had the long fingernail. My homeless friend, remember Chris? And he had the long hair. But Chris used to say he was, I'm sure he was renting, but he was renting a house that a cop wanted to buy. Chris got arrested for whatever it was, this was years ago. While he sat in the county jail, the cop purchased the home. The cop who made the arrest purchased the property. Meaning that's like involved with it goes into foreclosure, then he made the bid on it before the public realized. According to Chris, that was his story, which would show me you're dealing with the level of criminality that is not normal and corruption. So now when everybody in this neighborhood got a code enforcement violation for expired registration, they all got scared because this was in the media. And then the police chief, Markle, at our local schools where my daughter attended, Flower Bluff schools, had like a meeting with all the citizens. I didn't go. And he went and tried to calm them down. And his explanation for that was, well, this is policing, and if we make sure the grass is short and we do it, that cuts down on crime. What that was retaliation. Do you understand that? The chief obviously didn't want the neighbors complaining about certain drug houses in Flower Bluff. And it basically put all them on notice. Don't be bitching about the drug houses. Now, many of you that are local remember that story, but maybe you didn't see behind the lines, like I just kind of opened your eyes a little bit. Because there certainly was not giving that guy the fine because his fence was 1 inch too high. Maybe it was a new fence. Tear it down. You put that on the people that called to complain. I wasn't one of them, by the way, that called. I learned that from the media. Now what this does is open your eyes a little bit to one of my friends. They were telling other people about the years of what went on here, and to a degree still goes on. And he said how cops in these situations, and the bad ones, could walk up and just kill certain people. And the other person, I think it was a girl, said, well, how could they do that? And my friend, look, some of my friends served time for murder, okay? And he said, like, the girl was like, that can't be. And he explained to her, no, they walk up with the weapon in these drug dealings and they shoot. He kind of was not laughing, but because the public is like, this could never happen. And when the girl said to him, how could they do it? He said, easy. They pull the gun out, the corrupt ones, they pull the trigger and shoot the person, and that's not going to get reported. You don't call 911 when those incidents happen. The people that the fine officer at Internal Affairs, when I said there's every crime in this thing going on with cops, he wanted more information. Meaning it wasn't a surprise to him that they were killing, that they were in the drug trade, that they sell cop dope, that they got every crime under the sun. He was not surprised about it and wanted more information, sort of like the good cops cannot stop that other element. I shared that one incident about the Turtle Cove because I mentioned to you some of the people that rose the ranks that were here for many years were either in all this stuff, a part of it, or all knew it was going on. So even as I speak today, everybody that lives here knows it. There are drug houses where I live in Florida that cops run those homes. It's not a surprise. Everybody knows it. Everybody on the street knows it. People who are friends with the officer know it. Some of them are in those homes. So there's a protection. Meaning there's a protection where if somebody calls in a neighborhood and says, look, they're dealing, and they give the address, and then they call the police department, the guy that owns it's a cop. The innocent dispatcher says, we have a reporter call that comes in, and that one officer happens to own the property. Says, oh, I'll take care of that. Don't worry about it. Okay, so what is this? It's to let you see that don't get the wool pulled over your eyes in this community. It's to let you see that all the money that you are pumping in and I am pumping into that police department is wasting. It's not only not the fulfillment of their job description, they're on the element of them are on the other side. There's an element of them that are contributing to the distribution of drugs on the street. There's an element of them that are in every criminal activity under the sun. Okay? Now, all the stories over all the years, you say, well, surely John has to give us information. I gave all that. But that one little incident of even recent ones, if they know the names of people and things are coming in on them, they tell that officer, quit and leave town. They don't bring charges against the officer. They tell him, or he does it, because that happened in the last 8 months. So when you have cops that are involved in stuff, even if it starts honing in, like the mayor might ask a question or something again to the police chief or whoever, they're not running this city. They just called, look, you gotta leave town. It's not, we're gonna get you and investigate you, maybe you're involved in a murder or drug deal. No, it's, they let that guy know, look, it's closing in. You're gonna make us and the rest of the department look bad, so he leaves. That's how they deal with it. This should open the eyes of anybody that's thinking of establishing business or investing in real estate. This will make you, this city is off limits for that because of the huge problem we have. I've seen people drive around in their vehicles, this is over the last few years, with a big sign on the back of this truck that code enforcement is lawless, basically. And they're cops. And so he must have knew that they used that as a tool. In the particular incident here, code enforcement was used as a tool to shut the local community up, because obviously they were complaining about a few houses. I'm not sure which ones they were, but that's what the media reported. And the more they complained about the drug dealing house, the chief, for whatever reason, didn't like it. And code enforcement, like I said, did that. That silenced everybody. Now, I don't report that stuff. I'm trying to help people on the street to get away from that lifestyle. So I don't call the cops and say, oh, but so this is number 2. I'll title it CCPD Chief Mike Markle or whatever that way. Because they ignore, even if you had national media, which you did, critique things. And there were other things besides the Tom Greenwell thing, the flash bomb incident, the killing of whoever. And they just don't care. The national media could say, you know, normally if you live in a little town, wherever you are, we're not that big, 300,000 people, and you have the national media asking questions, normally you deal with that. This town did not. It was like a joke. So the national media wants to know, are they doing drug deals? So that's how they deal with it here. So, next question. Okay, this is Friday morning. I'm uploading videos. These are the ones I post in the evening. And so it's just been such a history, okay? I wanted to clarify that even when it was brought to the attention of an officer who was working in internal affairs, he knew this. That's the thing, he knew it. There were some of the things at that time that I didn't mention a lot, but they were stealing. Cops were going after. There was a raid. My friend Matt, who's no longer around, but like they raid, a trailer park here, and one of the officers came after the raid in civilian clothes and just took every gun. You're talking thousands of dollars of guns, and just walked away with every gun, and illegally. So I asked Matt at the time. I said, "Now was he in uniform?" He said, "No, he just showed up, but they all knew the cop." So he went and collected everything. There's an element of felony criminal activity to the highest level. Okay? It's drug dealing, killing, murder, hits. Some of my friends, because they used to be in this with them over a long period of time. But they indicated, John, more than likely you're going to be targeted by them, John. But they said, John, they're going to have someone else do it. Now, look, my friends did tell me that because it would be too difficult for the cops themselves to kill me. So they said it'll be somebody that, because in the drug world and in the corruption world, and please understand that I've kind of documented a lot of these things over the years. This goes on. There was a big case, Philadelphia, wherever it was, but there were cops involved in all of this for many, many years. And finally, it takes federal government to kind of look into these things. And so they busted a lot of them that were involved. So there's always an element of this. It's not just unique to our area, but in our area, it's not dealt with because I equate the policing here like Mexican, okay? And this is not racial. I'm not talking ethnicity, Hispanic. I'm saying in Mexico, most people should be aware, we're very close to Mexico here. So in Mexico, you have a lot of dirty cops, drug busts, the whole thing with El Chapo and everything. So for my perception, from my experience with all these stories and things, is that's how it is here. That's why you as the public, you see a cop car and officer and you don't, that's not your paradigm. But my paradigm is it's equal to like the policing in Mexico. That's how I see it here. So I can't tell the difference when there's one cop car and is it the ones my friends told me that were involved in this? Was it the one that was doing the raids in Dallas with my friend, kicking in the doors with the CCPD badge? This raid, he knew all the line. Just took, I think he was a heroin addict, that officer. This was probably, my friends did a lot of time in prison, so it was probably before they even, 20 years ago. And that cop died. Oh, I think I do remember some of the name, but I would never give it either way. So, but there's so many of these, like so many of these. And my friends used to be surprised, but it also taints them. When they do all their time, their history in criminal life, drug dealing, all the things, killings, and so they remember that there were cops with them throughout all those years. And then when these guys get out, they do their time, they're back on the streets. Sometimes the cops are also remembering that they have dirt on them. And that's why sometimes those guys would get picked up. I had another friend of mine, and this is not a first time incident. He said, John, one time they just pulled a bag of cocaine out. Said, look what we found on you. And this has happened so many times to a veteran friend of mine. And these officers are now running it, okay? They're right at the top of CCPD. But they pull a bag of drugs, particular drugs. Oh, look what we found on you. And this happened to multiple people. So it's a game, it's a toy. here, the cars, the dispatch, it's all a game to them. It's all what they can get out of it, with the money they can make. And then the other percentage, yes, you have a percentage that are good people, but it's mixed in with this. All right, so this is just all honest testimony, true testimony. Okay, this is maybe the last one for today, tonight. God willing, I'll post some more videos.